Okay, oh, yeah, that works. I keep thinking whenever I got this thing on, I should bring my harmonica sometime. Yeah, I don't think I've got one in here. I used to carry one to KTD all the time, and when everybody, I'd like staying in what they call the dorm, which is this like sleeping quarters underneath the shrine room in the Gompa. And you're not supposed to sneak up into the shrine room at night, but who can help themselves, right? So I'd go up there with my harmonica and play blues for Karmapa, that's like, it has great acoustics, really. I don't know if that was broadcast to the world or not yet, Don. Oh, gee. I thought that was going to be just amongst us. Well, good morning. Thank you for coming out on this October day. It's really wonderful to see you all. As well, some of you might know, let's see, this is, I had the Dharma Talk last week, and that one was the third in a series of talks that I started actually the week before Lopon Lama Tobden was here and talked about the Mahamudra Lineage Prayer. And the first talk I gave was about devotion, mostly because we get it wrong. Devotion means one thing to Eastern people. It means something different to Western people a lot of the time. We all know what we think it means, like bowing and scraping to a person or an idol or an invisible superior being or something. But from a Buddhist point of view, that's not what devotion is, so we talked about that. From a Buddhist point of view, you already have Buddha nature. That's the important thing. You have all the same equipment as any Buddha that ever existed. You got all the equipment. You have all the potential. Just haven't realized it yet. Same for me, obviously. And so the devotion is devotion to our own potential. And therefore, our curiosity that even gets us here in the first place, that's a form of devotion. It's important. So, cultivating curiosity is a practice of devotion, and so on. I'm not going to give that talk again right now. Then we talked about renunciation. Once again, in the West, we think that means you're going to be a monk in a monastery and wear a hair shirt and beat yourself with a whip or something like that because you're bad. That's not the Buddhist idea of renunciation. Renunciation is recognizing that we live in a world of ego trips that we've projected ourselves, and we're engaged in constantly, even when we're practicing Dharma, it turns out, in trying to get pleasure and avoid pain, and trying to get gain and avoid loss, and so on and so on. And the thing that we renounce is our attachment, our clinging to the idea that if we get that one right, those dual pairs, like avoiding pain and suffering and getting pleasure and happiness, if we get that right, we'll actually have happiness, we'll have enlightenment, we'll have a good life. Dharma says that's not true. And so what we're renouncing is that illusion that what we think of as reality in that regard, it just isn't. So we talked about that. And last week we talked about awareness. This is where it gets a little more difficult, because awareness is vast and open and limitless, without center or without edge. And So the way we went about it is I just kind of threw an idea or two out, and then we do a little brief guided meditation practice or contemplation and worked our way through, because really awareness has to be experiential. There are books filled with words about awareness, but words about awareness and understanding awareness will not actually give birth to awareness in any of us. Well, that happens to be even more true for the next stanza in the prayer, which reads this way. The essence of thought is dharmakaya, as is taught. Nothing whatsoever, but everything arises from it. To this meditator who arises in unceasing play, grant your blessings so that I realize the inseparability of samsara and nirvana. So you can see there's a jump shift there. We've got the renunciation thing, the renunciation of that duality, and now we're going to get to the place where we see it all as the play of what's called the dharmakaya. Spoiler alert right now, we're going to do a little more experiential things today, and I hope that it works. I hope that everybody can have some kind of sense or some kind of personal experience of what this is. Second spoiler alert, there's not a lot of, it doesn't say this in a lot of books, but it does in some of them. Dharmakaya is love. That's it. And when you think about our suffering, if you had to boil it down to one thing, and we don't have to, we can have all kinds of detailed understandings and stuff, but if you boiled it down to one thing, it'd be somehow a disconnection from love is suffering. So when they talk about the essence of thought is dharmakaya, as is taught, it's nothing whatsoever, but everything arises from it. It's something that has to be experienced, can't be talked about. When Lao Tzu wrote the Tao Te Ching, he said, the Tao that can be talked about is not the Tao. So I have my work cut out for me today. I'm going to try to talk about this thing that can't be talked about and somehow make it a little authentic. In that spirit, let's start this talk. The way we usually start talks by chanting the refuge prayer together, and be mindful that what we're taking refuge from is the falseness, the illusion, the duality that creates suffering for ourselves and others. And what we're supplicating to take refuge in is enlightened mind, the ultimate essence of which is dharmakaya. So let's do it twice in our home language, in English, and then chant it the last time in Tibetan. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, May I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. Sunje chudam soki chugnam la, changchu pardu dakni kyaptsu chi, dagi jinso gi sonam gi, rola penshir Sanjay Drupar Show. So, Dharmakaya. What is the direct translation of Dharmakaya means truth body. Okay? And it's in the Buddhist way of thinking of things, we all, and certainly all Buddhas, the equipment is that we have three bodies, three kayas. The first is the nirmanakaya, which is like, flesh and bones, the presence here of us as physical beings. And Buddhas that are present, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, for instance, is a nirmanakaya Buddha. At least in my heart he is. And the second body is called Sambhogakaya, which literally translated means bliss body. Well, I want to unpack that for a minute. Bliss body, in just a minute. Bliss body is kind of like the atmosphere that fills up this framework of nirmanakaya. What's that atmosphere? Well, there's a lot of different formulations for what that's comprised of, but the most succinct and complete one I can think of are the 6 perfections. Those are generosity and ethics and patience and joy and mindful awareness and wisdom. Those are the 6 perfections. So a Buddha, when you get around one of them, just kind of, it's coming out of their pores. It's like overwhelming. It's a strong energy. When Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche used to visit, you could feel it. I mean, it was palpable. There were times when he would walk in the room, or I would walk into a room where he was, and my mind would kind of blank out, and I would just be a puddle. It's true. It's just kind of overwhelming in a good way. It made it a little difficult when sometimes we were able to get private interviews with him, and you walk in the room and you're just like kind of empty in a puddle. He knew how to handle that, though. So anyway, the Sambhogakaya is that. And that's why when we see a Chenrezi with 4 arms, or, white Tara with 7 eyes, the 2 ones like we have, and a 3rd one in her forehead, and each hand and each foot, and so forth, all the things. That's just conveying how it is in this kind of liminal state of bliss. These are all qualities, all those different ways of portraying that body, or the different implements, are actually metaphors for some quality that's, one of those bliss qualities. So that's the Sambhogakaya. Now, Dharmakaya, Dharmakaya is the truth body. And it's, when we finally have our shrine all the way together, we'll have like shrine furniture, and we've got Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche wanted us to have certain representations of Buddhas on that shrine. They're already here. They're covered up down in the community room. It's like bigger than life size. Well, it's hard to say. They're like very big. And the main one isn't like this main one here, which is a representation of the dharmakaya Shakyamuni Buddha. He wanted us to have actually Vajradhara, who is the representation of the Dharmakaya of the Buddha. So this is going to be interesting to have that as the centerpiece. In that sense, I'm kind of humbled just even talking about it, because that's what this particular shrine room, in a sense, will be dedicated to. The self-arisen awareness tantra, oh, how about that, fancy, says non-conceptual awareness, in essence, the dharmakaya. So non-conceptual awareness is, in essence, the dharmakaya. That's an important thought for later in this. The clarity of unimpeded awareness is the Sambhogakaya. So, it's like if it's non-conceptual, it's like you're just wide open and bowled over. But once you realize it's kind and compassionate, once you realize it's patient and generous and so forth, those are concepts, okay? Those require clarity. And as clarity comes up, when we understand what it is we're in the presence of, especially if it's a wonderful thing like that, we can experience some bliss. And that's the Sambhogakaya. And then it says, an awareness appearing as anything whatsoever, anything, something, which means it's a person, place, or thing, right? A noun, somebody with a name, that kind of thing. Anything whatsoever is the Nirmanakaya, okay? So that's a succinct definition for people who want to remember the three kayas. It's pretty simple. We can all understand this. That's one of the things I like about basic Buddhism. It's pretty simple. There's not a lot to remember, actually. You got to remember two things. One, that you have the same nature, the same equipment as a Buddha. And two, interdependence is reality, so you're connected to everything, and everything's connected to you. That's it. So the question comes up, why are we not yet Buddhas? We have the same potential. What is it that separates us? One of the great Dzogchen teachers, Ken Rinpoche, who was he passed away probably only 10 or 20 years ago. This is the way he just would see his students, and this is what he would say. This is what he would pray for them. Rest in great natural peace, this exhausted mind, beaten helpless by karma and neurotic thoughts, like the restless fury of the pounding waves in the infinite ocean of samsara. Rest in natural great peace. What a wonderful invitation. And then he would go on to teach the Dharma. because that's what the Dharma's for, is to actually cut suffering off at the root. That's what it's for. And it turns out that it's a completely inside job. You can't, what the Buddha taught is you can't get happiness by getting stuff. I mean, it's true, Maslow was right, by the way. I mean, it's true, food, shelter, and clothing are really good. And we need to have that. And we need to help each other with that. That's true. These nirmanakayas require that. But we're perfectly capable of the first two perfections. Remember them? The bliss body, generosity, we're helping each other. And ethics, realizing that we all deserve justice and peace. We all deserve that. And being on the Dharma path actually invites us to participate in that. But as you know, if you've ever been involved in that kind of thing, just bringing a check to wherever is helpful, but it somehow doesn't give you the access that is satisfying to your soul the way that serving soup in a soup kitchen does, and actually having a direct experience. The thing that keeps us from experiencing ourselves as Buddhas really is simply the stories we tell ourselves. We tell ourselves all kinds of stories about ourselves, about who we are and who we aren't, and what we are and what we aren't. And we very rarely rest contentedly with this particular person who, as the prayer says, to this meditator who arises in unceasing play from the dharmakaya, from love itself. We really don't see ourselves that way. We don't, right? So how do we get from where we are to where we can begin to experience that a little bit? That's where Dharma gets, like on the one hand, it's simple conceptually. It's complicated on the other side because it's only got those two concepts, those two beliefs. It's got a ton of method. So one of the methods that's particular to this tradition is called Nundro. Sue was teaching about Nundro this morning. So I'm not going to talk too much about it, except that I'm going to cobble together kind of something experiential about it in a minute. If you think about the way it's structured, for those of you who know it, it starts first of all with contemplating some truths. Like the first truth is that if you've got a human life and you realize you have the potential to be a Buddha, that's precious. That's like unbelievable. Of all the living beings on the planet, there are relatively few humans, even though there are 7 or 8 billion of us. Of all those billions of humans, there's relatively few that even have heard the idea that you have Buddha nature, that you already have what you seek. Most people spend their lives looking for what they seek elsewhere. So that's precious. The second piece is that, but it's delicate, it's fragile, it can all go away really fast, and nobody knows exactly how long we've got. So treat this precious thing with great care and don't waste your time. The third thing is that cause and effect is the reality. We call it karma, that's the shorthand, but really what you think, do, and say matters a lot. It matters a whole lot because cause and effect is reality. And we want to create the causes and conditions for everybody to awaken to their own profound nature, to their own sacred potential, right? And then lastly, re-emphasizing that renunciation thing is simply that even if you get it perfect, even if you get it just right, you serve all of samsara's demands and needs and wants, and you got everything that anybody could desire, it still won't bring happiness. That's called the defects of samsara. That's the illusion that we try to get everything we need to be accepted in the heavenly country club, wherever that may be. And then we get there and it's like Groucho Marx said, I don't think I want to belong to a club that would have me as a member. You know, it's like, oh man, what am I doing here? I pledged a fraternity in high school once. I went through the hazing. I sold more ads for their silly little fundraising thing than anybody. And then I got there and they blackballed one of my best friends and I quit. You know, it's like, I didn't want to be in that club. It's just, samsara's like that. You don't want to be in that club. Even if you get it perfect, you don't want to be there. So, coming out of that, of course, we take refuge. First thing, okay, I've been taking refuge in this crazy thing that's never going to deliver. It's designed to not deliver for me. You know, it's crazy. That's why we call that neurosis. It's if we keep doing it, but it's nuts. And so we take refuge in the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha because the Buddha is our own potential, our enlightened nature. The Dharma is an authentic path, tried and true, that we can see people have actually trodden upon and woken up to their own potential. And Sangha is all of you, all of us who support each other, and all the invisible ones we can't see that are supporting us. I've got news for you. The more enlightened you get, the more you love everybody. It's really clearly true. And so whether the Buddha is in front of you as a person or in your imagination or wherever the Buddha may be, the Buddha's doing everything the Buddha can in order for you to wake up. That's what Buddha wants for us, is our own happiness. And so we should actually access that, right? Take refuge in that. When we do practice and we do supplications, we should bring our whole self to it. When we do offerings, bring our whole life to it. If you've been to the symphony, offer the symphony. If you've seen something horrible, bring that and supplicate about that. If you've wasted your time watching a horrible TV show for a few hours, bring that, anything, you know, from the sublime to the ridiculous. Offer that. Supplicate about that, about how you don't want to get fooled again, and so forth. And so out of that sense of offering and supplication, then we engender bodhicitta, which is the mind of awakening and wanting for ourselves to wake up and wanting everybody to be free of suffering, wanting everybody to have that recognition of their own Buddha nature. So in the Nundro practice, we have this set of meditations that help us engender that. The most famous one that we all kind of memorize by heart eventually is, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the cause of suffering. May they remain in perfect joy and abide in peace. I mean, there are other words that people use, but that's it. Once again, guess what's happened? This dharmakaya, this framework, takes refuge and then fills it with the atmosphere of those four immeasurable qualities of kindness, compassion, joy, and peace. The same thing, Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya. We recognize that we're not getting it, and if we're really honest with ourselves. And so then we begin to do some practices with our imagination that help break down the boundaries that we suffer under our ego trips and so forth. And then we do something called Vajrasattva practice. Something I've noticed about Vajrasattva practice, Tara practice, Chenrezig practice, Medicine Buddha practice, all the practices, they all have the same structure and the same qualities. And you can sum them up as guru yoga, I think. I think somebody might say I'm wrong about that, but that's okay. Right now I got the mic, so. So what I want to do is just talk through the way those practices work. What we're starting with, if you will, is this creative energy. It's in us all the time. And it is like completely free. But then it gets projected through a film. And that film is all our own memories. And you can expand on memories as being whatever they are. They're the way that we program this functioning being. And then it projects that on consciousness and says, that's reality. That's the way things are. Of course, if you don't like the reality much, if you recognize that they're suffering, what do you do if you're in the movie theater? Well, you change the film. And the light still projects through, and then some different pictures come onto the screen. That's the way it works. Well, doing practice in a way, yeah, it's a little bit artificial in a way, but it's changing the film is what we're doing. We're, for a minute, suspending this reality that, oh, I'm Eric Weinberg. And for a minute, I start to really develop a different projection. Oh, I'm Chenrezig. I'm the Buddha Chenrezig. Okay? And actually, what Tai Situ says is that's actually a little bit closer to the truth. It's not the truth of who you are, but it's closer to the truth than who you think you are. So it's a very useful step on the path. So what we're doing when we do practice that brings us to a direct experience of dharmakaya, the truth body of an enlightened being, is first we're changing the film. That's why we need the practice, because conceptually we can't get there. We bring our own projections into whatever concept we have. No matter how refined our academic mind is, it's still limited by what we think reality is. All right. So we start with this, always are starting with this contemplation of the way things are, those 4 contemplations of precious human life, impermanence, karma, and the defects of samsara, and we take refuge because it's natural to do that. And out of that, if we really feel refuge, it's impossible for compassion not to arise. Impossible. And then we begin with one of these practices. What's really important is there's just one important point there. Sometimes we try to practice to get out of something or get away from something. That's not a good idea. That's just you kind of co-opting stuff, again, based on what you like and what you don't like. And things can get a little lost, and you'll start hiding the reality of what's really going on from your own journey because it doesn't fit in with the reality you want to see, and you'll become a dried up old yogi. You've probably met some dried up old yogis. That's how you get to be one, is by not being real. The great nun, Jetson Palmo, says, it never says this in Buddhist books, except that it does in her book. That's funny. Anyway, but honestly, once the ego begins to cooperate, that's all we're trying for here, is to get our ego to cooperate. It becomes more tamed. It becomes enthusiastic for the path. It's an enormous step forward. If we're fighting the ego all the time, we're going to have endless problems. You have to get all the levels of mind cooperating. This is very important. This is why the Buddha said that first we give loving kindness and compassion to ourselves. This means that first we tame our minds, we tame our ego, so the ego begins to trust. Even though this path is the death of the ego, nonetheless, the ego will help towards its own annihilation because something in it knows that it will open up into something so much greater than we can imagine. So we come out of this prayer for compassion. We include compassion for ourselves. We start to quiet down a little bit because really that's all we want. That's what will soothe us. I've checked this with Lama Kathy, but I believe it's really important to start with just a few moments of shamatha. So just right now, just take a moment to sit up straight and bring your awareness to a point. You can use your breath or whatever you want. You could use my voice if you want. And just feel the rhythm of that, the texture of that. And whatever else comes up, even the urge to try to remember what I'm saying, just let it go. And rest on that one point. Of course, thoughts keep coming up, but our relationship to them changes. We're not trying to chase after them or push them away. We just appreciate them. In Moonbeams of Mahamudra, Tashi Namgyal quotes Matripa, the great Siddha from 1,300 years ago. He says, moment by moment, thoughts arise from that which is always here. These very thoughts are the supreme condition of the natural mind. Both are inseparable from the beginning. I point out both of those as one taste. In other words, the thoughts are the atmosphere arising from our bare awareness, which is limitless. Tashi Namgyal summarizes these passages by saying that correctly understanding cognition, simultaneousness, is the realization that all coarse and subtle thoughts are recognized as the dharmakaya. That is, as the embodiment of enlightenment. So simply at this point, at each point along the path, take a break, use your shamatha, recognize thoughts arising and where they're arising from, and the unity of this Buddha nature and thoughts, whatever they are. The last line of the Mahamudra Lineage Prayer stanza we're looking at says, grant your blessings so that I realize the inseparability of samsara and nirvana. That's how we experience that, simply by resting mind in authentic shamatha. So we start with that. And then from that, we actually generate a thought. We use our creativity, our imagination, to generate our guru, our beloved, the Buddha, Chenrezig, in our very presence. A little bit above us, a little bit in front of us. And that body is made of light, but it's present, so it's like a dharmakaya and a sambhogakaya. It's a light body, it's a bliss body, but it's there, it's with us. And that's where we bring our supplication and our offerings. So we take all of what our life actually is right now and bring it and offer it. And because Buddha only wants to love us, only wants that, only wants to liberate us, That kind of offering really pleases the Buddha, not some big ego trip about all the ways I'm perfect, but everything, the whole 9 yards. And when you realize that, all that stuff that you've been stressing about is actually part of something pleasing to what, to what you consider the awakened one, you'll feel a little happy. That's good. And you'll also want everybody else to be happy. Boy, I wish everybody could feel like this. And so usually in these practices, it says that you make the supplication and offering to the Buddha, and the light rays go out to all sentient beings, and it purifies them and frees them of all their obstacles and hindrances and difficulties. That's how that works. And then in these practices, this just gets cooler and cooler. So then in these practices, you absorb all sentient beings, all of them, even the ones that are even problematic to you because you already offered them to the Buddha and he says that's all right, and they become a part of you. And you request empowerment. And what does that mean? Well, first, we request that whatever obstacles we have from understanding that we've got the same equipment as a Buddha, those obstacles will be purified. And when we request that, white light comes from the forehead of the Buddha, and it fills your body, and it washes away everything that keeps you from actually experientially knowing that you have this potential, that you have the same equipment. And then you, in all honesty, and everybody knows because you made an authentic and honest supplication, you realize you've got some obstacles to these perfections, I'm not so generous, really, and I'm not so ethical, really. I cheat here. I bought a lottery ticket, whatever. Patient, it depends, so on and so forth. But I want to change this atmosphere. I want to change the film. And you acknowledge that to the Buddha, and red light comes bursting from his throat and enters your throat. Now, why the throat? They call that speech empowerment. Well, speech is how we relate to others and how we relate to ourselves, whether it's self-talk or what we say to anybody else. Speech is relationship. We're talking about the purification of all the qualities we have in relationship. It's what we're doing. And this purification of speech actually is bringing all those qualities, enlightened qualities, into the relationships that this framework with the potential of the Buddha is going to have. And then we say, I'm going to need some energy for this. My wisdom is just kind of flat. It's not like lively. Maybe I'm a little bit of a dried up old yogi or something. And you pray for the wisdom empowerment to have that wisdom energy empowered, and blue light comes from the guru's heart to your heart, and it brings all the fundamental energies to you, the stability of earth, the goodness of it, the power and humility of water, the warmth and brightness of fire, the ability to nourish everything like air, and the openness for everything like space. So all the classical energy elements, and now you've got this framework that's full of this atmosphere, and it's energized, and what's getting in my way? Well, I still have these habits and this reactivity and these propensities and, frankly, karma that I have accumulated in the past. I need help with that. So then all three of those lights come at the same time. And they wash away all the tangled knots and complications and reactivities that we carry with us. Washes away that old bad tape, that old film. And so check this out. Just feel if you can feel that. You've done this practice with your imagination, and you just rest. Nothing left to do. And you open and open and open. And no matter what comes up, it engages light, kindness, and compassion, and joy, and wisdom. It's very quiet. And some thought will insinuate itself at that point, of course. And you can just change it and remember that you have actually mixed your mind with the mind of your guru. That your guru's blessing has become a part of you. And the guru that you've been imagining melts into light and into you, becomes inseparable. And then you melt into light and flow through the whole universe, inseparable as goodness, as love in the whole universe. I know that the mandala offering in Nundro comes before Guru Yoga, but to me, that's the perfect mandala offering. I haven't checked that with any authorities, but it's the way I think about it. And you recognize that you are inseparable from your own Buddha nature. And with that, you're ready to start the day. Now, guess what? That's a powerful way to start the day. Once you get used to it, you can do that in 10 minutes. Honestly, you might want to spend longer. You might not have longer, but it's worth it to actually do that. And that stillness that you feel when you mix your mind with the Guru's mind, with the Buddha's mind, that's the dharmakaya. That's the only way that, it can't be described. That's the only way you'll come into contact with the truth body of the Buddha. That's it. And that's why, from the depth of my heart, I'm profoundly grateful to this place and to the Dharma and to all our teachers, because there's no way that I would ever figure that out on my own. No way. And even if I had, I wouldn't even know how to approach it. And because they are exactly what I was saying they are. They love us. They want us to be liberated. They've given their whole lives to sharing this. That's what they're doing. And in our own small ways, you know, whatever we're doing the rest of the day, whoever we see, we can bring this, and people will meet this, and even the people that get pissed at us, even the people that hate us, let alone the people that love us, they'll somehow be touched by it. And that's the best we can do. So to me, it's really important, if we're on this Dharma path, to start the day with something like this. And if nothing else, just a few minutes of shamatha to bring the mind, because that's already gives you a glimpse of this, right? So to start with that. And then at the end of the day, to bring your whole life just the way it is, all of it, and offer it in supplication, and kind of finish your day with reminding yourself somehow, with whatever your practice will look like. Doesn't have to be the way I say it is, but mix your mind with the mind of your beloved, and then fall asleep. So you start your day with awakening awareness, and you end your day with bringing it all to the path. It's a pretty good day. So that's my prescription for getting a glimpse of the Dharmakaya, which we can't name at all. All right. There is like roughly 5 minutes left. I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments, but I would love if you did, and you came to one of the mics to say something or ask something about this or anything else.
I have a question about ego. At one point you said the ego would cooperate.
Uh-huh.
And then, because I find that is a big obstacle and very painful at times.
Yeah, well, that's why Jetson Tenzin Palmo said it's a big step when it starts to cooperate. It is painful. One of the things about practice, I think, is, you know, it does bring some relief, right? Mm-hmm. Do you experience that?
Yes.
Well, ego likes that. And so, I mean, I hate to be a shell for Dharma practice, or I don't hate to be a shell for Dharma practice, actually. But if you can do a little more practice and keep it very authentic, bring all the ego trips to it, and just let the practice kind of process it, right? We don't process the Dharma processes us. There's no doubt about that. Your ego will eventually kind of, it likes it when it feels when you feel a little better as a whole, when you feel a little relief. And once it starts liking it, it begins to cooperate, and it becomes for some, you can see this actually in some people, it can become a little bit of a Dharma ego trip, to be this great practitioner and all that kind of stuff. That's not a bad thing. That's actually a step in the right direction. But you'll begin to want it more and more. And then, you know, life will do a fine job of bringing humility back in the picture when it's necessary, or at least it has for me. Does that make sense?
Yes, because I see I'm not very consistent, and
Yeah.
I tend to just practice when I'm in dire straits, and
Yeah.
I see where the ego
Yeah,
is
that's a
directing me
mistake.
that way instead of just the routine
It's
mentioned the practice.
yeah, it's a mistake to just practice when you're in dire straits.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, the Dharma is medicine. A lot of people say Dharma is medicine. So you take it when you're sick, But I don't think of it that way. I think of it differently than that. Yeah, it's medicine, maybe more like a vitamin that you want to take it every day. That's the thing. I like thinking of meditation practice as like dental hygiene.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying, yeah. Or good diet.
You brush your teeth every day. You spend time taking care of, maybe even floss, I don't know. There's a lot we do for our teeth. And of course, everybody loves you for that because you don't have bad breath. And you love you for that because your teeth aren't rotting and you don't have to go through the pain of, all the kinds of dentistry you need if you don't brush your teeth. Well, our minds are a little like that too. And meditation is like, not dental hygiene, but it's mental hygiene. I think that's a more useful way to think of it. And certainly practice when you're in dire straits. But practice when it's dull and boring, and practice when it's wonderful. And bring it all to the path. And I think you'll find the ego will begin to be very happy to cooperate with getting you down the road. That's what I think. Just to expand on the metaphor, you don't want smelly breath. You also don't want stinking thinking, right?
Right.
And it helps with that. You don't want rotten teeth. You also don't want rotten behaviors and things like that. And meditation, yeah. Buddha was so generous. Really, these practices come, right, that's the source, right?
Great, thank you.
And out of love, he just said, yeah, just do this every day. That's it. So here's the thing. I think it's really good if you can commit to doing something doable. A lot of people avoid Dharma practice, particularly people who come here, because we do a lot of things that take time and effort and energy, and it feels overwhelming, and I can't do that every day, right? Well, don't do that every day. If you can't do that every day, that's fine. If you take 10 minutes a day, you can probably afford 10 minutes a day no matter who you are. Wake up 10 minutes earlier, whatever. Get on your cushion and just do some authentic shamatha practice that begins with refuge and bodhicitta and ends with dedication, ends with giving away the goodness of it. If you can just do that much mental hygiene every day, you'll find that the ego will all of a sudden it'll change. It's not immutable. It'll change. Things will change. I guarantee that.
Awesome. Great, thank you.
Sure. Well, I think, as usual, my friend Paul Volcker says I'm long-winded. So I think that may be true, because now it's 5 minutes past where we usually leave off. Let's definitely dedicate the merit of, yeah.
Would you just repeat that prayer that Ken Rinpoche said?
Which one?
The beating your mind, I can't remember it. Just the one about how we're beating our minds and the waves. I don't know what it was. He said the one that Ken Rinpoche
Oh,
said.
yeah.
Just real briefly, 'cause I want to remember it.
Okay, this is lovely. This is like, Sue's like actually a real chaplain, for real. This is such a good chaplain prayer. You can take a picture of it. Rest in great natural peace. This exhausted mind, beaten helpless by karma and neurotic thoughts, like the relentless fury of pounding waves in the infinite ocean of samsara. Rest in natural great peace. That's it. It's like, okay. It's the whole thing. He's like being real there. It's like, yeah. Exhausted mind, I think we all get that. Beaten helpless by karma, I think we all get that. Neurotic thoughts, oh yeah, lots of that. The fury of pounding waves, yeah, it's quite vivid. Anyway, sure. So, let's just say the dedication of merit prayers in English. Before we do it, I want you to pay close attention. In the second part, it says, the courageous Manjushri who knows everything as it is. Don't hold anything back, in other words. Dude already knows. Let him help. Bring yourself the way you are to the table. Samantabhadra knows in the same way. Well, that's not just the name. Samantabhadra actually is the representative of the dharmakaya, the vast openness, luminous openness that's beyond center and boundary. So just so you know who those guys are. So by this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri who knows everything as it is, Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. You see, it says just what we were talking about. It's amazing. Thank you all. I'm just delighted that you all came.